Hello, welcome to Casual Veteran Gamer. In this video today is the last of the martial weapons. Hopefully I haven't missed any out, and there are 6 of them left. They're all two-handed, like dedicated two-handed martial weapons. Now there are 6, but lots of them are fairly similar. We're mostly going to be comparing damage die and weapon abilities only. So I'm going to start off with the Glaive and Pike and Halberd. These 3 have got a damage of 1d10. They're all heavy, two-handed, and have extra reach. Heavy means that small creatures, which would be halflings, though I don't have a halfling ready to test this with. All small creatures have disadvantage when wielding these weapons, when making attack rolls with these weapons, even if they're proficient. Two-handed means two-handed, you've got to use 2 hands. Extra reach means that instead of needing to be within 5 feet of an enemy, we have to be within 8 feet here. I'm a bit sad because in 5th edition, Dungeons and Dragons, extra reach means an extra 5 feet, which would really mean the range should be 10 feet, but hey ho, can't win them all. If you look at the Glaive and the Pike, they both have almost exactly the same weapon abilities apart from the middle one. They both have rush attack. As previously said in other videos, it's good for getting into position and has a half decent condition inflicted on the enemy. They both have brace melee. We haven't come across this yet. So spend 20 feet of your movement speed. For the rest of your turn, roll melee damage twice and use the highest result. Ideally, you would use this on a turn where you've got more than one attack, which at the moment can only be with potions of speed and action surge, or anything else that gives haste, like haste spores. And it's basically like having advantage but with damage. Now, on the downside, they all have 1d10 damage rather than 1d12 or 2d6, which the others have later. So this extra reach business, if I was a melee character, or using a weapon that doesn't have reach, we can see Astarion has to get to here, and he can just about attack the red cap. If I get Tavered in, he can actually attack them. He hasn't got an action because I just put the weapon back on, but he can actually attack from further back. Not exactly directly behind. Let's just test that. Oh, even standing further behind, directly behind, you can just about reach. Now, that might not seem like much, but if you're positioning yourself carefully, you will find that there will be some times where you would be able to reach an enemy where you wouldn't be able to with a weapon that doesn't have reach. I myself have come across this too many times where maybe I'm not planning ahead carefully, maybe something's in the way. Here we are. Right, so we see I can actually attack him here. What I'm going to do also is actually use brace melee. And we'll notice we lost some movement speed because I used the potion of speed. Of actually 20 feet isn't that much. However, for smaller races or the slower races, dwarves and halflings, that's quite a lot of their movement speed used up. Right, it's only 65% chance to hit. Of course, I missed. Now, while that's going on in the background, the Pike is essentially the same except it has piercing strike instead of lacerate. For these 2, I'm going to give them a 7 out of 10. They have the same damage as a longsword, let's say, in 2 hands. They've got this extra reach, but this is 2-handed, and there's no option to use it 1-handed. So I don't think I can make it as good as a longsword in that respect. And no race gives proficiency with a Glaive, Pike, or Halberd. So we can see here, this is the range that he is kind of controlling. I'm not going to switch to the Pike. I don't think there's any need. The Halberd, instead of having the braced weapon ability, gets Cleave, and I don't think this compares. I'm going to give the Halberd a 6 out of 10. Rush attack is decent. Lacerate's okay, because we might want the disadvantage on constitution saving throws. But Cleave, just it's never going to do enough damage to make it worth it. So that then leaves us with the Greataxe, Greatsword, and Maul. Let's go to the Greataxe. So the Greataxe has Cleave, has Lacerate, it's okay. And Prepare, I'm not a fan of Prepare. I mean, I guess if you can do multiple attacks a turn, like with the other one, it's okay. You deal an additional 3 slashing damage. And, you know, it's actually a good time to use it, because I've got 2 attacks. Although I've already used one for switching your weapon, never mind. And I do want to point out, when we use these prepare weapon abilities, or brace, that they will apply to the weapon abilities also. So let's go with Cleave. Because this is probably the one time that Cleave is good, is if you do link it with Prepare. And that's the maximum amount of damage I could have done. And that's okay, actually. 10 damage to 2 targets would have been good, but that's going to be quite rare. Now, one benefit of the Greataxe compared to the previous 3 is it does 1d12 rather than 1d10 damage. I would say that Cleave probably is only worth using with Prepare, because it's got these 2 together. If you can set up the situation where you can use the 2 of them, but it's a good combination. And as before, Lacerates, it's okay. It's not amazing, it's not the worst, it's just okay. Now, in early access, I think I need to talk about like 1d12 versus 2d6, because the last 2 weapons have 2d6 damage. So on average, rolling 2d6 does more damage than 1d12. The difference is, the average of 1d12 is 6.5, and the average of 2d6 is 7. The difference is minimal. You do have to remember we're also adding our strength modifiers to this, half a damage difference. The thing is, with 1d12 damage, there's an equal chance of having a 1 and a 12, whereas with 2d6, you have a lower chance of hitting the highs and the lows. There's less variance in the results that you get. So you're much more likely to get like 6, 7, or 8 compared to 2 or 12. So depending on your mindset, you might prefer having it a bit more risky and go with 1d12 over 2d6. There's something else that doesn't apply in early access because we don't have half-orcs and we don't have high enough level barbarians. But half-orcs and barbarians have separate abilities where they can add a single damage die to their critical hits. So if, let's say, a half-orc scored a critical hit with a greatsword, they would roll 4d6 from the critical hit plus 1 more d6. If they scored a critical hit with a greataxe, it'd be 2d12 from the critical plus 1 more damage die, so 3d12. The average of 3d12 is 19.5 and the average of 5d6 is 17.5. So when we eventually get the choice of adding 1 extra die to our critical hit, the Greataxe wins out. But on average, without critical hits, the more dice you throw, the slightly higher the average will be, and you'll be more likely to get the average. So you're not going to be getting the large numbers or low numbers as often. Anyway, for the Greataxe, I'm fine with 1d12. Cleave is okay only if you can use Prepare, and Prepare is okay if you can do more than 1 attack per turn or hit more than 1 enemy per turn, and Lacerate's alright, but the Prepare and the Cleave are a little bit conditional. You're not always going to find yourself in the position to use them. The damage is better than these previous weapons, so I'm going to give it, I haven't really given out many halves, but I'm going to give the Greataxe 7.5 out of 10, because I feel it's better than the Pike and Glaive, but it's not like a whole lot better than the longsword and 2 hands. And we've got some other weapons coming up. So this leaves us with the Greatsword and the Maul. I'm kind of grouping them together because they're both 2-handed martial weapons and do 2d6 damage. There are a few differences. The Greatsword does slashing damage and the Maul does bludgeoning damage, and as mentioned before, the bludgeoning damage gets us ever so slight edge because of the enemies that do have vulnerability to bludgeoning damage in the game. Now I've got Lae'zel here with the Everburn Blade. I'm not taking into account the 1d4 fire damage, but if we compare a Greatsword to the Everburn Blade, it is essentially the same apart from it does an extra 1d4 fire damage. The weapon abilities for the Greatsword are Pummel Strike, which I like, I think it's very good, Lacerate, which is okay, and Cleave, which I don't rate very highly because we don't get to use it that often and the damage is halved, which is really annoying. Now one thing I didn't mention earlier is one benefit of the Greatsword and the Maul is that with the Great Weapon Fighting style, which Lae'zel has, it's pretty decent. The Great Weapon Fighting style lets you re-roll or damage dice of a 1 or a 2. Let's see if we can get this going. Apparently not. Lets you re-roll a damage roll of 1 or 2. And with 2d6, there's basically a 1 in 3 chance that each of those 2 dice rolls a 1 or 2 and you get to re-roll it. Now the point of this isn't necessarily for maxing out your damage, but it's good for like raising the minimum damage. All right, let's give the Paladin here the Maul. Now for Greatswords, I'm going to give them, I quite like them, 8 out of 10. Top average damage, a very decent weapon ability with Pummel Strike. The other 2 are just okay. That leaves us with the Maul, where its weapon abilities are similar to the Warhammer really. We've got Tenacity, Backbreaker, and Concussive Smash. Tenacity's alright, Backbreaker and Concussive Smash are both good, although Backbreaker kind of lags behind a tiny bit because of the low damage. So compared to the Greatsword and the fact that it is bludgeoning, I'm not going to make it 9 out of 10, but I think this is a one that deserves another 0.5. So I'm going to give it an 8.5 anyway. And again, this pairs up well with Great Weapon Fighting if you've got someone with that anyway. So I think now I've covered all of the weapons. And as a quick recap for my own ratings, from the simple weapons, Torch wins out by a long way. From the one-handed finesse weapons, the short sword is the best, in my opinion. Then we have the other martial weapons, two-handed. I guess the Maul one out there, actually, getting an 8.5. But the two-handed martial weapons, they're all pretty decent. With the Glaive and the Pike and the Halberd with the extra reach, which sometimes I really wish I had. So let me know what you think of the weapons that I've covered in this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, please consider subscribing. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Oh wow, look at that. Got a critical hit on a flourish. Who knew that could happen? Well, knew that could happen, but got hit for quite a lot of damage there. Hang on a second. Why did that even do any damage? Oh, it's because of the short sword of first blood. Okay, fair enough.